The crack of the Winchester rifle split the desert air like thunder, and Kaya Nighthawk knew they were going to die. "Ayanna, stay low!" she screamed over the thundering hooves behind them, her voice lost in the chaos of dust and gunpowder. The younger girl clung to the stolen horse's mane, her dark eyes wide with terror as another bullet whistled past her ear. Blood from Kaya's shoulder wound painted crimson streaks across her torn buckskin dress, but she didn't slow down, couldn't slow down, not when her baby sister's life hung in the balance. The Arizona desert stretched endlessly before them, a hellscape of red rock and thorny mesquite that offered no mercy to the hunted. Behind them, 6 bounty hunters rode hard, their faces twisted with the kind of cruel determination that came from knowing each Apache scalp was worth $50 in Tucson. The lead rider, a scarred brute named Dutch Kellerman, raised his rifle again, taking careful aim at Kaya's back. "Ayanna, when I count to 3, you jump left," Kaya shouted. 1, 2. The shot rang out just as both sisters threw themselves sideways, their horses stumbling in the loose shale. Ayanna's mount went down hard, sending the 19-year-old girl tumbling across the rocks. Kaya's horse staggered but kept running, and for one terrible moment, she faced an impossible choice: save herself or turn back for her sister. There was no choice at all. Wheeling her horse around, Kaya thundered back toward where Ayanna lay motionless among the stones. Dutch and his men were closing fast, their whoops of triumph echoing off the canyon walls like the cries of hunting wolves. She had maybe 30 seconds before they reached her sister. 30 seconds to save the only family she had left in this world. "Get up, little bird," she whispered, using their father's pet name for Ayanna. "Please get up." But Ayanna didn't move. Blood trickled from her forehead where she'd struck the rocks, and her body lay twisted at an angle that made Kaya's heart stop. For a moment, the fierce Apache warrior who had killed 3 men to escape their last captors felt something she'd thought was beaten out of her long-ago helplessness. Then, Dutch Kellerman's rope settled around her shoulders, jerking her from the saddle with brutal efficiency. She hit the ground hard, the breath driven from her lungs, but rolled to her feet with the fluid grace of a mountain cat. The knife appeared in her hand as if by magic, its blade still stained with the blood of the last man who'd tried to touch her sister. "Well, well," Dutch drawled, his tobacco-stained teeth showing in a predatory grin. "Looks like we caught ourselves a pair of wild fillies. This one's got some fight left in her, boys. Might be fun breaking her in." His men laughed, the sound ugly and knowing. Kaya counted 6 of them, all armed, all looking at her like she was already dead. Her gaze flicked to Ayanna, who still hadn't moved. If she was gone, then none of this mattered anyway. Kaya would take as many of these animals with her as she could. "You want her?" Kaya snarled in perfect English, surprising them. Most Apache women they'd hunted couldn't speak the white man's tongue. "Come and take her. See how many of you I cut before you bring me down." Dutch's grin widened. He'd broken Apache before. The key was showing them how powerless they really were. Charlie grabbed the little one. "Let's see how brave our warrior princess is when her baby sister's life depends on her cooperation." Charlie Moss, a weasel-faced man with dead eyes, dismounted and walked toward Ayanna's still form. Kaya tensed, measuring distances, calculating angles. She could reach Charlie before the others could stop her, but Dutch's gun was already trained on Ayanna's head. One wrong move and... "That's right, sweetheart," Dutch cooed. "You're starting to understand. Drop the knife and we'll be real gentle-like. Might even let you both live long enough to see how much you're worth in Tucson." The knife fell from Kaya's fingers, clattering on the stone. But her eyes promised a different kind of death for anyone who touched her sister. Dutch had seen that look before, usually right before an Apache prisoner tried something desperate and stupid. He'd learned to break that spirit quickly. "Tie 'em both up good and tight," he ordered. "And Charlie, check that little one for any tricks. These Apache squaws are crafty as rattlesnakes." As rough hands seized her arms, Kaya's mind was already working, already planning. This wasn't over. As long as she drew breath, she would protect Ayanna, and someday, somehow, she would make these men pay for every humiliation, every violation, every moment of terror they inflicted. But first, they had to survive what was coming. And Kaya had a sinking feeling that their real nightmare was just beginning. 2 days later, in the dusty town of Tucson Territory of Arizona, another kind of hunting was about to begin. Samuel Hayes stood at the edge of the crowd gathered in the town square, his weathered hands clenched into fists as he watched the most obscene spectacle he'd ever witnessed. Human beings were being sold like cattle displayed on a makeshift platform while buyers examined them like livestock. The auctioneer, a greasy snake of a man named Ezra Blackwood, was calling out prices with the enthusiasm of a carnival barker. Next up, we have a fine pair of Apache fillies fresh from the Chiricahua territory. Blackwood's voice carried across the square. Strong back's good for ranch work, and the older one's got spirit that just needs the right kind of breaking. Sam felt sick. At 43, he'd seen enough of life's cruelties to fill several lifetimes. He'd fought in the Apache Wars, lost his wife Ellen and baby daughter to a Chiricahua raid 5 years ago, and spent the last half-decade drinking himself into an early grave on his failing ranch outside town. But this was something else entirely. This was evil made manifest in broad daylight. The crowd pressed closer as 2 young Apache women were dragged onto the platform in chains. Sam's breath caught in his throat. Even through the dirt and dried blood that covered them, he could see they were sisters. The resemblance was unmistakable. The same high cheekbones, the same proud bearing despite their circumstances. The older one, maybe 24 or 25, stood protectively in front of the younger girl, her dark eyes scanning the crowd with the wariness of a cornered wolf. It was those eyes that hit Sam like a physical blow. They held the same fierce protectiveness he'd seen in Ellen's face when she'd tried to shield their daughter from the Apache raiders who'd burned their first home. The same desperate courage, the same willingness to die before letting harm come to someone she loved. The older one's named Kaya. Blackwood continued, staying well back from the woman's reach. Speaks English, which makes her more valuable for housework. The little one's Ayanna. Quiet as a church mouse, but she'll work hard with the proper motivation. His leer made several men in the crowd chuckle knowingly. Sam's hands trembled with rage. These weren't animals to be bought and sold. They were human beings, sisters trying to protect each other in a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty. And he was just standing here watching it happen like all the other cowards in this crowd. "We'll start the bidding at $50 for the pair," Blackwood announced. Hands shot up immediately. Sam recognized most of the bidders. Jeremiah Colt, who owned the copper mine north of town and had a reputation for working his men to death. Blackjack Morrison, who ran the brothel on the edge of town and specialized in broken women. Thomas Rigby, a rancher known for his vicious treatment of Mexican workers. 60, called out Colt. 75, Morrison's voice was thick with anticipation. The bidding climbed steadily. Sam watched in horror as these vultures circled their prey, each man's intentions more vile than the last. The younger sister, Ayanna, had begun to tremble, though she still held her head high. The older one, Kaya, wrapped her chained arms around her sister as much as possible, whispering something in Apache that seemed to steady the girl. 150, Colt shouted, his face flushed with excitement. 200! Morrison countered, his dead fish eyes fixed on Ayanna. Sam's vision began to blur with rage. 5 years ago, he might have been one of these men. His heart so hardened by loss that he could convince himself that all Apache were savages who deserved whatever they got. But time and grief had a way of teaching a man about suffering, about how pain could strip away everything that made life worth living. These women had lost everything just like he had. The only difference was that society had decided their suffering was entertainment. 250, called out a new voice. Sam turned to see a man he didn't recognize, a thin fellow in an expensive suit who looked out of place in the rough crowd. Something about the stranger seemed odd, but Sam's attention was pulled back to the platform as Blackwood continued the auction. 250 from the gentleman in gray. Do I hear 300? Colt raised his hand. 300. The crowd was getting excited now, feeding off the energy of the bidding war. Sam found himself looking directly at Kaya, and for a moment their eyes met across the square. What he saw in her gaze wasn't a plea for help. This woman was too proud to beg. Instead, it was a challenge, a question that seemed to burn straight through to his soul. Are you going to stand there and watch, or are you going to do something? The question hit him like a sledgehammer. What was he going to do? Stand here like a coward while these monsters bought and sold human beings? Go home to his empty ranch and drink himself to sleep knowing he'd had a chance to make a difference and done nothing? Or was he going to honor the memory of his wife and daughter by refusing to let this happen to someone else's family? $350, Morrison shouted, practically salivating. $400. Colt fired back. Sam's heart was pounding so hard he could barely hear. He thought about Ellen, about the way she died trying to protect their baby girl. About all the Apache he'd killed in the war, men who'd probably been fighting for the same thing, to protect their families, their way of life. About 5 years of meaningless existence since losing everything that mattered. Maybe this was why he was still alive. Maybe this was his chance to do something that mattered, something Ellen would have been proud of. $500. The words left his mouth before he'd consciously decided to speak them. Every head in the crowd turned toward him, and a shocked silence fell over the square. $500 was more money than most people in the territory saw in a year. It was nearly everything Sam had left in the world. Blackwood's eyes lit up with greed. $500 from Mr. Hayes. Do I hear 6? Colt and Morrison looked stunned. They'd expected a bidding war between themselves, not some half-drunk rancher throwing around that kind of money. Colt started to raise his hand, then seemed to think better of it. Morrison scowled, but didn't counter. Going once? Going twice? Blackwood's gavel came down with a sharp crack. Sold the Apache sisters go to Samuel Hayes for $500. The crowd began to disperse, some disappointed by the quick end to the entertainment, others muttering about Sam's motives. He barely heard them. His legs felt like water as he pushed through the crowd toward the platform, his mind reeling with what he'd just done. He'd just bought 2 human beings. The thought made him sick, but there was no taking it back now. As he approached Blackwood to complete the transaction, he caught sight of the strange man in the expensive suit slipping away through the crowd. Something about the way the man moved struck Sam as important, but he couldn't focus on it now. Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. Blackwood oozed, practically rubbing his hands together. Excellent choice. These 2 will serve you well, I'm sure. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. The older one's got some fire in her, but a firm hand will sort that out quick enough. And the little one? His grin was nauseating. Sam fought the urge to put his fist through the man's face. Instead, he counted out the money in silence, his hand steady despite the turmoil in his heart. When the transaction was complete, Blackwood handed him a bill of sale like he'd just purchased a pair of horses. Pleasure doing business with you, Blackwood said. Come back anytime you need more workers. I get new stock every few weeks. Sam turned away without a word and approached the 2 sisters. They stood watching him with expressions he couldn't read. Wariness, certainly, but also a kind of resigned dignity that broke his heart. The chains around their wrists and ankles looked barbarically heavy. What are your names? He asked quietly. The older sister, Kaya, studied his face for a long moment before answering. I am Kaya Nighthawk. This is my sister Ayanna. Her English was indeed flawless, with only the faintest trace of an Apache accent. Well, Kaya and Ayanna, Sam said, pulling a keyring from his pocket. Blackwood had given him the keys to their chains. My name is Samuel Hayes, but most folks call me Sam. We have a long ride ahead of us. As he bent to unlock their shackles, Kaya spoke again. What do you want from us? The question was asked matter-of-factly, but Sam heard the steel underneath. This woman had been through hell, but her spirit wasn't broken. She was still fighting, still protecting her sister, still ready to face whatever came next. I want, Sam said, straightening up after freeing their feet, to get you both away from here and somewhere safe. He moved to unlock the chains around their wrists. I want to give you a choice about what happens next. Kaya's eyes narrowed. You paid $500 for a choice. I paid $500. Sam said, meeting her gaze directly because it was the right thing to do. The chains fell away from their wrists with a metallic clatter. For the first time since he'd seen them on the platform, both sisters looked genuinely surprised. Ayanna rubbed her wrists where the iron had chafed them raw while Kaya continued to study Sam's face like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Why? Kaya asked. Why help us? It was a fair question, and one Sam wasn't sure he could answer completely. How could he explain the moment when their eyes met across the crowd? How could he tell them about Ellen and the baby, about 5 years of guilt and grief, about the sudden certainty that this was what he was supposed to do? Because, he said finally, someone needs to. Sheriff Pete Bradshaw chose that moment to saunter over his badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. Bradshaw was a corrupt lawman who took bribes from anyone with enough money, and he'd been watching the auction with the kind of interest that had nothing to do with law enforcement. "Hayes," he said with a smirk, "hope you know what you're getting into. Apache women can be unpredictable. Any trouble they cause, it's on your head." "I can handle myself, Sheriff," Sam replied evenly. "Can you now?" Bradshaw's eyes roved over the sisters with obvious appreciation. "Well, remember, they're your property now. Anything happens, any trouble they cause, I'll be holding you responsible." He leaned closer. "And Hayes, some folks might wonder what a man like you wants with two Apache squaws, might start asking uncomfortable questions about your intentions." The threat was clear. Sam had just painted a target on his back by interfering with the auction, in a territory where Apache raids were still fresh in everyone's memory. Showing sympathy for the enemy could be dangerous. "My intentions," Sam said quietly, "are my own business." Bradshaw chuckled. "We'll see about that." He tipped his hat mockingly to the sisters. "Ladies, welcome to your new life." As the sheriff walked away, Sam turned back to Kaya and Ayanna. Both women had followed the exchange, and he could see they understood the implications. By helping them, he'd made himself a target. The question was whether they would trust him despite everything they'd been through. "My wagon's over by the livery stable," Sam said. "Unless you'd rather walk." "We'll come," Kaya said after a moment's hesitation. "But understand, if you try to harm my sister, I will kill you. I don't care what papers you have or what laws protect you. I will find a way." "Understood." Sam nodded. "And Kaya, I give you my word. Neither of you will come to harm while you're under my protection." It was a promise that would be tested sooner than any of them expected. The ride back to Sam's ranch should have taken 3 hours. They'd been traveling for barely one when the trouble started. Sam had been watching the horizon out of habit. 5 years of living alone in Apache territory had taught him to always be alert. So when he spotted the dust cloud behind them, he knew immediately they were being followed. 3 riders, maybe 4, staying just far enough back to avoid being obvious, but close enough to keep them in sight. "We've got company," he said quietly to the sisters who were sitting in the wagon bed behind him. Kaya's head came up immediately, her warrior instincts still sharp despite her recent captivity. She studied the dust cloud for a moment, then cursed softly in Apache. "Dutch Kellerman," she said grimly. "The bounty hunter who captured us. He must think he can steal us back." Sam's blood chilled. He'd heard of Dutch Kellerman, a brutal man who made his living hunting Apache for the bounty money. If Dutch was following them, it wasn't to congratulate Sam on his purchase. "How many men does he usually ride with?" Sam asked, checking his rifle. 5 or 6, Kaya replied, "all killers." The implications were clear. Sam was outnumbered and outgunned, traveling with 2 unarmed women in an open wagon. If Dutch wanted a fight, Sam was going to lose. "There's a trading post about 2 miles ahead," Sam said, snapping the reins to urge his horses faster. "If we can reach it—" "They won't let us reach it," Kaya said. "Dutch doesn't like witnesses. He'll make his move before we get to any place with people." She was right. As if responding to her words, the dust cloud behind them suddenly grew larger. Their pursuers had stopped trying to be subtle and were now riding hard to close the distance. "Ayanna," Kaya said urgently to her sister, "get down in the wagon bed and stay down. Whatever happens, don't raise your head." The younger woman obeyed without question, curling up between some supply sacks. Kaya moved closer to Sam, her dark eyes scanning the terrain ahead. "There." She pointed to a cluster of rocks about half a mile away. "If we can reach those rocks, we can make a stand." Sam nodded and whipped the horses harder. The wagon bounced and lurched over the rough ground, but the animals responded gallantly. Behind them, the sound of pursuing hoofbeats grew steadily louder. They were still 200 yards from the rocks when the first shot rang out. The bullet whined past Sam's ear close enough that he could feel the wind of its passage. He ducked instinctively, nearly losing control of the reins. A quick glance back showed him 6 riders spread out in a line, Dutch Kellerman in the center with his rifle raised for another shot. "Jump!" Sam shouted to the sisters. "Get to those rocks!" Kaya grabbed her sister and leaped from the still-moving wagon, both women hitting the ground hard and rolling. Sam kept the wagon moving for another few seconds to draw attention away from them, then dove off himself just as Dutch's second shot splintered the wagon seat where his head had been. The wagon continued forward, the terrified horses running wild with no one to guide them. Sam hit the ground, running his rifle in his hands, racing for the shelter of the rocks where the sisters had already taken cover. Dutch and his men spread out, knowing they had their quarry trapped. There was nowhere to run in this open country, and they had the numbers to simply wait out any resistance. "Hayes," Dutch called out, his voice echoing off the rocks. "This don't have to go hard. Just give us back our property and ride away." "They're not your property," Sam shouted back, checking his ammunition. He had maybe 20 rounds, not enough for a prolonged fight against 6 men. "The hell they ain't," Dutch laughed. "I captured them fair and square. You think paying that snake Blackwood makes you their rightful owner?" Sam felt Kaya's hand on his arm. When he looked at her, she was holding a small knife she'd somehow concealed during the auction. "Give me your pistol," she said quietly. "You know how to use it." Her smile was grim. "I've killed men before, Sam Hayes. Give me the gun." There was something in her voice that convinced him. Sam handed over his Colt .45, and Kaya checked the cylinder with the practiced ease of someone who'd handled firearms before. "Ayanna knows how to load," Kaya said. "You keep them busy. I'll try to work around their flank." Before Sam could object, she was moving, using the rocks for cover as she began to circle toward the bounty hunter's position. Sam watched her go with a mixture of admiration and terror. This woman was magnificent, brave, skilled, and absolutely deadly. But she was still just one person against 6 professional killers. "Time's up, Hayes," Dutch shouted. "Come out now or we start shooting." Sam's answer was a rifle shot that knocked Dutch's hat clean off his head. The bounty hunter dove for cover, cursing, while his men began returning fire. Bullets ricocheted off the rocks around Sam's position, sending stone chips flying. The gunfight that followed was brief but vicious. Sam kept the bounty hunters pinned down with steady rifle fire, while Kaya worked her way around to their left flank. When she finally opened fire with the pistol, her first shot dropped one of Dutch's men from his saddle. The suddenness of the attack from an unexpected direction threw the bounty hunters into confusion. 2 of them wheeled their horses around to face this new threat, exposing themselves to Sam's rifle. His next 2 shots found their marks, and suddenly Dutch was down to 3 men. But the tide turned when Kaya's pistol clicked empty. She was caught in the open trying to reload when one of the remaining bounty hunters got a clear shot at her. The bullet grazed her shoulder, spinning her around and sending her sprawling behind a small boulder. "Kaya!" Ayanna screamed, jumping up from her hiding place. "Stay down!" Sam roared, but it was too late. Dutch's rifle cracked, and Ayanna cried out as the bullet creased her leg. She stumbled and fell, blood spreading across her buckskin dress. Something snapped inside Sam at that moment. The sight of the young woman bleeding, the sound of her cry of pain, brought back every nightmare memory of the day Ellen and his daughter died. Red rage filled his vision as he stood up from cover, his rifle speaking again and again. His first shot took Dutch in the shoulder, spinning him around. His second shot killed the man who'd wounded Ayanna. His third shot shattered another bounty hunter's rifle, sending the man scrambling for his horse. The remaining 2 men lost their nerve and fled, leaving Dutch wounded and alone among the rocks. Sam advanced on the bounty hunter, his rifle trained on the man's chest. "Please," Dutch gasped, clutching his wounded shoulder. "Don't kill me. I was just trying to make a living." "By hunting human beings," Sam said coldly. "They're Apache. They ain't even people." Sam's finger tightened on the trigger. It would be so easy to end this man's miserable existence, to make sure he never hurt another innocent person. But as he looked into Dutch's terrified eyes, he saw not a monster, but a broken, desperate man who'd let hatred and greed corrupt his soul. "Get out of here," Sam said finally. "And if I ever see you again, I will kill you." Dutch nodded frantically and stumbled toward his horseblood trailing behind him. Sam watched him ride away, then hurried to check on the sisters. Kaya's shoulder wound was superficial, but Ayanna's leg was bleeding badly. Sam tore strips from his shirt to make bandages, working quickly to stop the bleeding. "Is she?" Kaya asked, her voice tight with worry. "She'll be fine," Sam assured her. "The bullet just grazed her, but we need to get her to a doctor." As he worked, Sam became aware that both sisters were staring at him with something approaching awe. He'd just fought 6 men to protect them, strangers he'd known for less than a day. In their world, such loyalty was earned over years, not bought with money. "Why?" Ayanna whispered, echoing her sister's earlier question. Why risk your life for us?" Sam finished tying off the bandage before answering. The question deserved a truthful response, even if the truth was more complicated than he could easily explain. "5 years ago," he said slowly, "Apache raiders attacked my homestead. They killed my wife Ellen and my baby daughter. For 5 years I hated all Apache. I wanted revenge, wanted to make someone pay for taking everything I loved." Both sisters went very still, and Sam could see the wariness creeping back into their eyes. He hurried to continue. "But today, watching you two on that platform, seeing how you protected each other, I realized something. You're not responsible for what happened to my family any more than I'm responsible for what happened to yours. We've all lost people we loved. We've all suffered. But that doesn't give us the right to make others suffer." He looked directly at Kaya, willing her to understand. "Ellen died trying to protect our daughter. Today, I saw you doing the same thing for Ayanna. In that moment, I didn't see an enemy. I saw a woman doing exactly what my wife would have done, sacrificing everything for family." Tears were streaming down Ayanna's face, and even Kaya's eyes had grown bright. In a world that had shown them nothing but cruelty, Sam's words offered something they'd almost forgotten existed: compassion. "You could have been killed," Kaya said softly. "So could you," Sam replied. "But you still tried to protect your sister. Some things are worth the risk." As the sun began to set behind the distant mountains, Sam helped the sisters into his recovered wagon. The horses had stopped running after a mile and were grazing peacefully when he found them, the wagon damaged but still functional. "Where are we going?" Ayanna asked as they began moving again. "Home," Sam said simply. "I'm taking you home." For the first time since their capture, both sisters allowed themselves to hope that home might actually be possible. They didn't know what awaited them at Sam's ranch, didn't know if his kindness would last or if this was all an elaborate deception. But they knew one thing for certain: this man had been willing to die for them. That had to count for something. As they rode through the gathering darkness toward an uncertain future, none of them could imagine that their troubles were just beginning. The auction in Tucson had been noticed by more than just bounty hunters and corrupt sheriffs. Word was already spreading about the rancher who'd paid an enormous sum for 2 Apache women, and there were powerful men in the territory who had their own plans for Sam Hayes and his unexpected guests. The man in the expensive suit who'd briefly participated in the bidding had not been a random spectator. He was a federal marshal named Jacob Stone, and he'd been investigating reports of illegal slave trading in the Arizona territory. The auction he'd witnessed was exactly the kind of evidence he needed to build his case, but now his key witnesses were in the hands of a rancher he knew nothing about. Marshal Stone had a choice to make. He could arrest Sam Hayes for participating in illegal human trafficking, or he could trust that the man's motivations were genuine and try to use him to gather more evidence against the real criminals. It was a gamble that could either expose a major criminal conspiracy or let the guilty parties escape justice entirely. As his own horse carried him through the night toward Tucson, Stone made his decision. He would give Sam Hayes a chance to prove himself, but he would also be watching. And if the rancher proved to be just another predator in disguise, Stone would bring the full weight of federal law down on his head. Meanwhile, in the expensive hotel room where Ezra Blackwood was celebrating his successful auction, another conversation was taking place that would have chilled Sam's blood if he'd known about it. "The Hayes situation is becoming problematic," said a well-dressed man whose face remained hidden in the shadows. "He paid too much attention to himself today. Questions will be asked." Blackwood shrugged, counting his money. "So he bought 2 squaws. Plenty of men have done the same. Not for $500 they haven't, and not Samuel Hayes." "What's special about Hayes?" The shadowy figure stepped into the lamplight, revealing the hard features of Jeremiah Colt, the mine owner who'd bid against Sam at the auction. But Colt wasn't just a businessman, he was also the secret leader of a conspiracy that reached to the highest levels of territorial government. "Hayes used to be a cavalry officer," Colt explained. "He knows about military operations, supply lines, troop movements. If he starts asking the wrong questions about where these Apache prisoners are really coming from..." Blackwood's face paled as he began to understand. "You think he might figure out about the raids?" "I think Samuel Hayes just became a liability that needs to be eliminated," Colt said coldly, along with his 2 new pets. The auction in Tucson had been more than just a sick display of human cruelty. It had been part of a larger operation that involved capturing Apache prisoners during fake military raids, then selling them into slavery while claiming they'd been killed in battle. It was a scheme that generated enormous profits for the conspirators, while also serving their goal of driving all Apache off valuable mineral-rich land. Sam's unexpected intervention had thrown a wrench into their plans. The fact that he'd paid such an enormous sum suggested he might have ulterior motives beyond simple lust or the need for cheap labor. And if he started investigating the backgrounds of the women he'd purchased, he might uncover the truth about how they'd been captured. That could not be allowed to happen. "What do you want me to do?" Blackwood asked. "Nothing for now. Let Hayes think he's safe. Let him get comfortable with his new acquisitions, but be ready to move when I give the word." Colt moved toward the door, then paused. "And Blackwood, make sure your next auction is better organized. We can't afford any more disruptions like today." As Colt disappeared into the night, Blackwood poured himself a whiskey and contemplated the future. He'd made good money from the day's sales, but something told him the easy times were coming to an end. Men like Samuel Hayes had a way of complicating even the best-laid plans, but that was a problem for tomorrow. Tonight he was rich, and 2 Apache women were riding toward an uncertain fate with a man who might be their salvation or just another predator in disguise. Only time would tell which it would be, as Sam's wagon rolled through the desert night, carrying its precious cargo toward a destination none of them could imagine. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would determine not just their fate, but the future of justice in the Arizona Territory. The auction block in Tucson had been just the beginning. The real test of Samuel Hayes's character and the sisters' ability to trust again was still to come. But for now, in the darkness of the desert night, they had each other. And sometimes that was enough to make even the darkest journey bearable. The silhouette of Sam's ranch appeared on the horizon just as the first pale light of dawn began to creep across the sky, and with it came the promise of either redemption or reckoning. The choice was still to be made. The Red Canyon Ranch sat in a valley that looked like God had painted it with fire and gold, surrounded by towering sandstone cliffs that caught the morning light and threw it back in shades of crimson and amber. As Sam's wagon rolled up the dusty trail toward the modest adobe house, Kaya felt something she hadn't experienced in months, a flicker of hope. But hope was dangerous. Hope made you vulnerable. "It's beautiful," Ayanna whispered, her voice barely audible over the creaking wagon wheels. The younger sister had barely spoken since the gunfight, the shock of violence adding another layer to the trauma she'd already endured. Sam heard her and turned in his seat, offering a tired smile. "Ellen always said this place had magic in it, said the red rocks held all the sunset colors, just waiting to share them with folks who needed some beauty in their lives." The mention of his dead wife created an awkward silence. Kaya studied Sam's profile as he drove, noting the way his jaw tightened whenever he spoke of Ellen. 5 years of grief had carved deep lines around his eyes, but there was something else there now, a purpose that hadn't existed when he'd woken up that morning. As they approached the house, a woman emerged from the front door, wiping flour-covered hands on her apron. She was middle-aged with graying hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent her life working under the desert sun. When she saw the 2 Apache women in the wagon, her expression shifted through surprise, concern, and something that might have been understanding. "Dios mío, Señor Sam," she said in accented English. "What have you done?" "Something I should have done a long time ago, Maria," Sam replied, climbing down from the wagon. "These are Kaya and Ayanna Nighthawk. They'll be staying with us." Maria Consuela had worked for Sam and Ellen since their early days on the ranch. She'd held Ellen's hand while the young woman died of fever, had watched Sam slowly drink himself toward his own grave, and had stayed because someone needed to keep the man from destroying himself completely. Now, looking at these 2 battered Apache women, she saw something she recognized, the look of people who'd lost everything but were still fighting to survive. "They're hurt," she observed, noting the bloodstains on their clothes. "Bullet wounds," Sam said grimly. "Nothing too serious, but they need tending." As Sam helped the sisters down from the wagon, Kaya caught sight of something that made her blood freeze. Hanging on the porch was a cavalry saber, polished and displayed like a trophy. Below it was a framed photograph of Sam in military uniform standing with a group of soldiers she recognized as Apache fighters. Her hand instinctively moved to the knife hidden in her boot. Every instinct screamed danger, but Ayanna was leaning heavily against her, weakened by blood loss and exhaustion. Running wasn't an option, not yet. "Maria," Sam was saying, "could you prepare the guest rooms and maybe find some proper clothes for our guests?" "See, of course." Maria's eyes were kind as she looked at the sisters. "Come, Niñas, let's get you cleaned up and fed." But Kaya didn't move. She was staring at that saber, remembering the last time she'd seen cavalry steel. It had been sliding between her cousin's ribs while soldiers laughed about killing another red devil. Sam followed her gaze and winced. In all the chaos of the day, he'd forgotten about the reminders of his military service that decorated his home. To him, they were just memories of another life. To Kaya, they were evidence that she'd walked into the den of an enemy. "Those are from my military service," he said quietly, "before I understood what I was really fighting for." "You understood perfectly," Kaya replied, her voice cold as winter wind. "You were fighting to take our land and kill our people. That saber has probably tasted Apache blood." The accusation hung in the air like gun smoke. Maria looked between them, sensing the tension but not understanding its source. Ayanna swayed on her feet and Sam stepped forward to steady her, but Kaya blocked his path. "Don't touch her," she warned. "She's bleeding again." Sam pointed out, noting the fresh stain spreading across Ayanna's bandage. For a moment, Kaya wavered between her protective instincts and her suspicion. Her sister needed medical attention, but accepting help from this man felt like betraying everyone who died fighting people like him. "I'll tend to her myself," she decided. "With what supplies?" Sam asked reasonably. "I have a medicine kit, clean bandages, laudanum for the pain. You can watch everything I do if it makes you feel safer." It was a reasonable offer, but reasonableness was a luxury Kaya couldn't afford. Reasonable white men had signed treaties they'd broken before the ink dried. Reasonable officers had ordered the slaughter of women and children. Reasonable citizens had cheered when Apache scalps were displayed in town squares. But Ayanna was growing paler by the minute. "Fine," Kaya said finally. "But I watch everything." Sam nodded and led them into the house. The interior was comfortable but sparse, clearly the home of a man who'd stopped caring about domestic niceties. Dust covered most surfaces, and the rooms had the unlived-in feel of a place where someone merely existed rather than lived. He directed them to Ellen's old sewing room, which had the best light and cleanest surfaces. As he gathered medical supplies, Kaya helped Ayanna onto the small sofa, whispering reassurances in Apache. "Tell me about the wounds," Sam said, opening his medicine kit. "When did they happen? What kind of bullets?" Despite her suspicion, Kaya found herself providing the information. Sam's questions were clinical professional, the queries of someone who'd treated battlefield injuries before. As he worked cleaning and rebandaging both women's wounds, his touch was gentle and sure. "You've done this before," Kaya observed. "Too many times," Sam replied without looking up. "War teaches a man to patch up wounds even if he's the one who caused them in the first place." The admission was unexpected in its honesty. Most white men would have glorified their military service, talked about duty and honor. Sam spoke of it like a burden, something that haunted rather than honored him. When he finished with the medical treatment, Maria appeared with clean clothes. Simple dresses that had belonged to Ellen altered hastily to fit the sisters' smaller frames. She also brought warm water soap and a genuine smile that transcended cultural barriers. "There's food in the kitchen when you're ready," she told them. "And these rooms," she gestured around the small space, "they're yours for as long as you need them." After Sam and Maria left them alone, the sisters finally had a chance to speak privately. "What do you think?" Ayanna asked in Apache, her voice still weak but clearer than it had been. "I think we're trapped in the spider's web," Kaya replied in the same language. "The question is whether he plans to eat us or just keep us for display. He could have let those bounty hunters take us. Maybe he wanted us for himself. Maybe he has debts to those men. Maybe this is all an elaborate game." Ayanna studied her sister's face. Even after everything they'd endured, Kaya's protective fury burned as bright as ever. It was what had kept them alive through months of captivity, but it was also what might keep them from recognizing salvation when it appeared. "Or maybe," Ayanna said gently, "he's exactly what he appears to be. A man trying to do the right thing." "Men like him don't do right things for people like us," Kaya insisted. There's always an angle, always a price. But even as she said it, doubts crept in. The way Sam had fought those bounty hunters, the gentleness in his hands while treating their wounds, the sadness that seemed to permeate every corner of his house, it all felt genuine in a way that couldn't be easily faked. A soft knock interrupted their conversation. "May I come in?" Sam's voice called through the door. "Enter." Kaya replied automatically, placing herself between the door and her sister. Sam stepped inside carrying a tray of food. Fresh bread, beef stew, and coffee that smelled like heaven after weeks of whatever scraps their captors had thrown them. But it was what he carried under his arm that caught Kaya's attention, the cavalry saber from the porch. She tensed hand moving toward her hidden knife, but Sam simply set the weapon on a nearby table and stepped back. "This belonged to my commanding officer," he said quietly. "Captain Marcus Webb. He gave it to me after a battle where we killed women and children who were trying to surrender." Kaya's eyes never left the blade. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to understand that I know what that saber represents. I know what I was part of, what I helped do to your people, and I want you to know that I've regretted it every day since." He reached into his pocket and pulled out something else, a small leather pouch that chinked softly with the sound of metal on metal. "These are Apache arrowheads," Sam continued. "I collected them from battlefields thinking they were trophies. But they're not trophies, are they? They're pieces of weapons your people made to defend themselves, pieces of fathers and brothers and sons who died fighting for their families." Kaya's throat tightened. She recognized the distinctive flint napping style of her own village among the arrowheads. Some of them might have been made by people she knew, people she'd loved. "Why do you keep them?" she asked. "To remember," Sam said simply. "To make sure I never forget what hatred costs." He set the pouch next to the saber. "I'm giving them to you. Do with them whatever feels right." The gesture was so unexpected that Kaya didn't know how to respond. In her experience, white men kept such items as proof of their victories over savages. They didn't hand them over to Apache women with apologies. "This could be a trick," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "It could be." Sam agreed. "But I'm hoping you'll give me a chance to prove it's not." Before Kaya could respond, the sound of approaching horses interrupted the conversation. Sam's expression immediately shifted to alertness. "Stay here," he ordered, moving toward the window. "And stay quiet." Through the glass, they could see a group of riders approaching the house. 6 men, all armed, led by a figure that made Sam's blood run cold. Sheriff Pete Bradshaw, accompanied by 5 deputies who looked more like hired gunmen than lawmen. "Trouble?" Kaya asked, reading Sam's expression. "The worst kind," Sam muttered. "Bradshaw's not known for making social calls." The riders pulled up in front of the house, dust swirling around their horses' hooves. Bradshaw dismounted with the swagger of a man who believed his badge made him untouchable. "Hayes," he called out, "need to have a word with you about your new acquisitions." Sam stepped onto the porch, keeping his rifle within easy reach. "What can I do for you, Sheriff?" "Got some complaints about them Apache women you bought. Seems folks are concerned about having hostile Indians so close to town." "They're not hostile," Sam replied evenly. "They're guests in my home." "Guests?" Bradshaw laughed and his men joined in. "That's a fancy word for property, and speaking of property, I need to inspect them. Make sure they're not planning any mischief." "Inspect them how?" Bradshaw's grin turned predatory. "Oh, you know, check for weapons, contraband, signs of hostile intent. Might take a while. Apache women can be tricky about hiding things." The threat was clear. This wasn't about law enforcement. It was about power, humiliation, and worse. Sam felt rage building in his chest, the same fury that had driven him to fight 6 bounty hunters. "The only inspection happening on my property," Sam said quietly, "is me inspecting how fast you can get off it." Bradshaw's expression darkened. "That's not friendly, Hayes. Not friendly at all. See, thing is, I got reports that them squaws might be involved in recent raids. Apache been hitting ranches east of here, stealing cattle, killing good Christian folk. How do I know your new pets ain't scouting for their warrior friends? Because they've been here under my supervision since yesterday." "Your supervision?" One of the deputies, a scarred man named Jake Morrison, laughed nastily. "What kind of supervision you providing, Hayes? The kind that happens in the dark?" Sam's finger tightened on his rifle. Mind your tongue, Morrison, or what you'll shoot lawmen for asking questions about your Apache whores. The word hit Sam like a physical blow. In that instant he saw red, not just anger, but a fury so pure it threatened to consume everything in its path. These men weren't just insulting Kaya and Ayanna, they were degrading everything decent about human nature. Last warning, Sam said, his voice deadly quiet. Get off my land. Bradshaw sensed the danger and stepped back slightly, but his pride wouldn't let him retreat completely. This ain't over, Hayes. Apache sympathizers got a way of finding trouble in this territory. You might want to remember that. And you might want to remember that I'm not some unarmed farmer you can bully, Sam replied. I've killed men before, Sheriff. Don't make me add to the count. For a moment, violence hung in the air like smoke before a wildfire. Then, Bradshaw made a gesture to his men, and they began mounting their horses. We'll be watching Hayes, the sheriff warned. Any trouble, any raids, any missing cattle, any dead white folks, and I'll be back with a warrant and enough men to turn this place inside out. As the riders departed, Sam remained on the porch until the dust settled. Only then did he allow himself to breathe again. Through the window he could see Kaya watching him with an unreadable expression. When he went back inside, she was standing by the table where he'd left the saber and arrowheads. They'll be back, she said without preamble. I know. They'll bring more men next time, men who won't be satisfied with just threats. Probably. Kaya picked up one of the arrowheads, turning it over in her palm. Why risk it? Why not just hand us over and avoid the trouble? Sam was quiet for a long moment, watching her examine the piece of flint. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of 5 years' worth of regret and loneliness. Because, he said, I've spent half a decade dying slowly, drowning in guilt and grief and whiskey. Today, for the first time since Ellen died, I felt like I was alive again, like I was doing something that mattered. And if it gets you killed, then at least I'll die for something worthwhile instead of wasting away in an empty house. The honesty in his voice cut through Kaya's defenses like a blade through silk. She'd expected lies, manipulation, self-serving justifications. Instead, she heard something she recognized, the voice of someone who'd lost everything and was looking for a reason to keep breathing. Ayanna thinks you're a good man, she said quietly. What do you think? Kaya looked at the saber, then at the arrowheads, then at Sam's weathered face. I think, she said slowly, that good men are dangerous in their own way. They make you want to trust them. And trust is dangerous. Trust gets you killed. Sometimes. Sam agreed. But so does never trusting anyone. Before Kaya could respond, Maria burst through the door, her face pale with fear. Senor, Sam riders coming from the east, many riders. Sam grabbed his rifle and moved to the window. In the distance, a cloud of dust marked the approach of what looked like 20 or 30 horsemen. As they drew closer, he could make out details that made his heart sink. A mix of cowboys, miners, and townspeople, all armed and riding hard toward his ranch. Vigilantes, he said grimly. Bradshaw must have spread word about you two. They're coming to take matters into their own hands. Kaya felt ice flow through her veins. She'd seen vigilante justice before. The kind where Apache women were raped and murdered while crowds cheered. The kind where the only trial was how long you could scream before you died. How long before they reach us? She asked, her warrior instincts taking over. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Weapons? 2 rifles, a shotgun, 4 pistols, and whatever ammunition I can carry. Against 30 men. Not good odds, Sam admitted. Kaya was already moving, checking the loads and the weapons, calculating angles and defensive positions. The house is indefensible. Too many windows, too many approaches. We need to get to those rocks behind the barn. She looked at him with surprise. You thought I'd let you fight alone? I thought you'd take this chance to escape. With my wounded sister and no horses. Kaya shook her head. Besides, these men aren't just coming for us. They're coming for anyone who'd help Apache. That includes you and Maria. Sam felt something shift in his chest, a warming sensation he hadn't experienced since Ellen died. For the first time in 5 years, he wasn't facing a crisis alone. Ayanna can't fight, Kaya continued, thinking tactically, and Maria is no warrior, So it's you and me against 30 men. Still terrible odds. I've faced worse. Her smile was sharp as a blade. And I'm still here. As the riders drew closer, their whoops and hollers echoing off the canyon walls, Sam made a decision that would change everything. He handed Kaya his best rifle and met her eyes directly. "If we don't make it through this," he said, "I want you to know, helping you was the best thing I've done in years." "If we don't make it through this," Kaya replied, checking the rifle's action, "I want you to know, you're the first white man I've ever trusted." The admission hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Then the sound of approaching hoofbeats grew loud enough to shake the windows, and there was no more time for words. "Maria, get Ayana to the root cellar," Sam ordered. "Don't come out no matter what you hear." "What about you?" the older woman asked. "We're going to remind these boys that some fights cost more than they're worth." As Sam and Kaya slipped out the back door toward the defensive positions among the rocks, neither of them noticed the figure watching from a distant ridge. Federal Marshal Jacob Stone had been tracking the vigilante group for hours, hoping to gather evidence of their illegal activities. What he hadn't expected was to find them attacking the very man he'd been sent to investigate. Through his spyglass, Stone could see Sam and Kaya taking position among the rocks, their movements coordinated like experienced partners. Whatever else Samuel Hayes might be, he wasn't a man who mistreated his Apache property. In fact, it looked like he was willing to die defending them. Stone faced a crucial decision. He could maintain his cover and continue gathering evidence, or he could intervene to prevent a massacre. Either choice would have consequences that could affect his entire investigation. The sound of the first gunshots made the decision for him. The battle that followed would be remembered in local legend for decades to come. 30 armed men against 2 defenders among the rocks, a fight that should have been over in minutes, but stretched on for nearly an hour. Sam's military training showed as he used the terrain to maximum advantage, forcing the attackers to approach through narrow gaps where their numbers meant nothing. Kaya proved to be a marksman whose skills bordered on supernatural. Every shot found its target with deadly precision. But the real surprise came when the vigilantes found themselves caught between 2 forces. Marshal Stone's arrival with a dozen federal deputies turned the tide, decisively trapping the attackers in a crossfire that ended their enthusiasm for mob justice. When the gun smoke cleared, 8 vigilantes were dead, 12 more wounded, and the rest in federal custody. Sam and Kaya had survived without serious injury, though both were deafened and exhausted from the prolonged firefight. "You're under arrest," Stone announced as he approached their position. Sam started to raise his hands, but the marshal shook his head. "Not you, Mr. Hayes, them." He gestured toward the captured vigilantes. "Attempted murder conspiracy, violation of federal law regarding treatment of tribal peoples. They're going to prison for a long time." "And us?" Kaya asked warily. Stone studied her for a moment, taking in her obvious combat skills and fierce protectiveness. "That depends. I'm investigating reports of illegal slave trading in this territory. I was at yesterday's auction, and I saw what Mr. Hayes did. Now I need to know, are you here voluntarily, or are you being held against your will?" The question carried enormous weight. Kaya's answer could either vindicate Sam or condemn him. After everything they'd been through, after the trust that had been building between them, this was the moment of truth. "We're here voluntarily," she said firmly. "Mr. Hayes saved our lives and offered us sanctuary. We chose to stay." Stone nodded slowly. Stone nodded. "In that case, you're all free to go. But Mr. Hayes, I may need to speak with you again as my investigation continues." "What investigation?" Sam asked. "The one that's going to shut down the slave trade in Arizona territory once and for all," Stone replied grimly. "And I have a feeling you and your guests might be key witnesses." As the federal deputies led away the surviving vigilantes, Sam and Kaya stood among the rocks where they'd made their stand. The afternoon sun was slanting low across the canyon, painting everything in shades of gold and crimson. "So," Sam said quietly, "what happens now?" Kaya looked at the man who'd been willing to die defending her and her sister. A day ago, she would have said that trust between Apache and white was impossible. Now, standing next to someone who'd proven his worth in blood and bullets, she wasn't so sure. "Now," she said, "we find out if 2 people from different worlds can actually build something together." "Is that what we're doing?" Building something? I don't know, Kaya admitted, but I'm willing to find out if you are. Sam smiled, the first genuine smile across his face in 5 years. I think Ellen would have liked you. I think I would have liked Ellen. As they walked back toward the house where Ayanna and Maria waited, both of them knew that they'd crossed a line from which there was no return. The battles ahead would be even more dangerous, not just against external enemies, but against the prejudices and hatreds that had shaped their entire lives. But for the first time since their worlds had been destroyed, both Sam and Kaya felt something that had been missing for too long: hope. Behind them, the red rocks of the canyon caught the last light of day and held it like a promise that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost. The real test was yet to come. 3 days after the vigilante attack, Sam was mending fence when he saw the dust cloud rising from the south. Not the chaotic swirl of angry riders this time, but the disciplined formation of military cavalry. His blood chilled as he counted the approaching figures, at least 20 soldiers riding hard toward the Red Canyon Ranch. "Kaya!" he shouted toward the house. "We've got company!" She appeared instantly on the porch, rifle in hand, her warrior instincts never fully at rest. Even in Maria's borrowed dress, she moved like a predator, scanning the horizon with eyes that missed nothing. "Military?" she asked, joining him at the fence line. "Looks like it. Full patrol coming fast." Sam squinted against the afternoon sun. "That's not a social call." The lead rider broke away from the formation as they approached, spurring his horse into a gallop. As he drew closer, Sam recognized the uniform insignia, a captain's bars on a man he'd never seen before. Young, maybe 30, with the kind of rigid bearing that marked fresh academy graduates who'd never faced real combat. "Are you Samuel Hayes?" the captain called out, reining in his lathered horse just short of trampling Sam's vegetables. "I am. And you are?" "Captain William Thornton, 3rd Cavalry Regiment." The officer's eyes fixed on Kaya with obvious distaste. "I'm here about the Apache prisoners you're harboring." "Guests," Sam corrected firmly. "They're guests in my home." Thornton's lip curled. "Guests, Mr. Hayes, I have it on good authority that you're sheltering escaped military prisoners, Apache hostiles who broke confinement during transport to the reservation." Sam felt Kaya tense beside him. This was the lie Ezra Blackwood had tried to use, but coming from a military officer, it carried far more weight. "You have bad authority, Captain," Sam replied evenly. "These women were purchased legally at a public auction. I have documentation." "Documentation from a known criminal." Thornton produced a folded paper from his jacket. "Ezra Blackwood was arrested 2 days ago on federal charges. His operations were completely illegal. Any transactions made through him are null and void." This was news to Sam, though Marshal Stone had hinted at larger investigations. But if Blackwood's auctions were illegal, what did that mean for Kaya and Ayanna's status? "Even if that's true," Sam said carefully, "these women have committed no crimes. They're under my protection." "Your protection?" Thornton laughed harshly. "Mr. Hayes, you're harboring enemy combatants. As a former cavalry officer, you should understand the implications." "Former cavalry officer?" Kaya's voice was sharp with suspicion. "You didn't mention that detail, Captain." Thornton looked surprised. "The savage speaks English. How interesting." He turned back to Sam. "Yes, Mr. Hayes served under Colonel Harrison during the Chiricahua campaigns. Quite distinguished service from what I understand. Makes your current sympathy all the more puzzling." Sam could feel Kaya's eyes burning into him. Another piece of his past revealed at the worst possible moment. How many more secrets would come to light before this was over? "My service record is irrelevant," Sam said. "These women are peaceful civilians." "Peaceful?" Thornton gestured to his men, who began dismounting in a practice formation that surrounded the ranch buildings. "Mr. Hayes, 3 ranches have been hit by Apache raiders in the past week. Cattle stolen, buildings burned, 2 men killed. And you expect me to believe it's coincidence that these attacks started right after 2 Apache women appeared in your household?" The accusation hit like a physical blow. Sam saw the trap closing around them. The timing was too perfect to be accidental. Someone had orchestrated this sequence of events to make Kaya and Ayanna look guilty. "We've been here the entire time," Kaya said, her voice controlled but dangerous. "We haven't left this ranch since we arrived." "So you say." Thornton's smile was cold. "But Apache are known for their stealth. You could have slipped away at night, provided intelligence to raiding parties, then returned before dawn. Mr. Hayes would never have known." "That's ridiculous." Sam protested, but doubt flickered in his mind. Had there been nights when he hadn't checked on them, times when they could have left without him knowing? Kaya saw the doubt in his eyes and felt something die inside her chest. After everything they'd been through, after fighting side by side, he still questioned her loyalty. The pain was worse than any physical wound she'd ever received. "You believe them," she said quietly. "Even now you believe them over me." "I don't." Sam started, but Thornton cut him off. "Enough discussion. I'm placing these prisoners under military custody pending investigation of their involvement in recent raids." He nodded to his sergeant. "Shackle them." 2 soldiers moved toward Kaya with iron restraints. She backed away, her hand moving instinctively toward the knife at her belt. "Don't," Sam warned her. "There are too many of them." "So now you're giving me orders." Her voice was bitter with betrayal. "Should I be grateful that my former master is looking out for my welfare?" The words cut deeper than she'd intended, but the hurt was too raw to contain. In that moment, all the trust they'd built crumbled like sand. "Kaya, that's not how you see me." She laughed bitterly. "I was foolish to think you were different. You're just like all the rest." Before Sam could respond, the first soldier reached her. What happened next would be talked about in cavalry circles for years to come. Kaya's knife appeared in her hand like magic, the blade opening the soldier's throat before he could blink. As he fell, she grabbed his pistol and put 2 bullets into the chest of the second man. The third soldier managed to clear his weapon, but Kaya was already moving, using the falling body as a shield while she dove for cover behind Sam's water trough. "Take her alive!" Thornton shouted, but his men were already firing bullets, splintering the wooden trough and sending water cascading across the yard. Sam found himself caught in the middle of a firefight, soldiers advancing on the woman he'd sworn to protect. For a split second, he hesitated, torn between military training and personal loyalty. Then he saw Thornton drawing a bead on Kaya's position and made his choice. Sam's tackle sent the captain sprawling, his shot going wild. "She's under my protection," he roared, grappling for Thornton's weapon. "You're interfering with military operations." Thornton snarled, driving his knee into Sam's ribs. "I'm protecting an innocent woman." Their fight was interrupted by a new sound. Apache war cries echoing from the canyon walls. Both men looked up to see warriors on horseback pouring down from the red rocks, at least 15 of them, painted for battle and armed with both traditional weapons and modern rifles. "Ambush!" someone screamed. The organized military operation dissolved into chaos as arrows began finding targets among the scattered soldiers. The Apache riders moved with fluid precision, using the terrain and their superior horsemanship to devastating effect. Sam recognized the lead warrior immediately. The distinctive white and red paint, the eagle feathers, the massive war horse. Chief Robert Nighthawk. Kaya and Ayana's father had come to rescue his daughters. But in the confusion of battle with bullets flying from 3 directions, rescue looked more like mutual annihilation. "Kaya," Sam shouted over the gunfire. "Call them off! Tell your father to stop!" "Why?" she yelled back, reloading behind the shattered trough. "So your military friends can arrest us all." A bullet shattered the wood inches from her head, and Sam realized she was trapped in an impossible position. Cavalry soldiers on 3 sides, her father's warriors attacking from the 4th. Any movement would put her in someone's crossfire. Without thinking, Sam sprinted across the open yard, diving into the water trough just as Chief Nighthawk's horse thundered past. The Apache chief's rifle swung toward Sam, but Kaya's voice stopped him. "Father, no, he's with us." Chief Nighthawk's weathered face showed confusion. In full war paint, with his traditional weapons mixed with modern firearms, he looked like a figure from another age, a time when Apache warriors could face any enemy and emerge victorious. "You are the white man who bought my daughters?" he asked in heavily accented English. "I'm the man who freed them," Sam replied, which brought a slight smile to the chief's lips. "Then we fight together," Nighthawk decided. "But first we must get away from here. More soldiers come." He was right. Sam could see dust clouds approaching from 2 directions, reinforcements summoned by the sound of gunfire. Whatever slim chance they had of explaining the situation peacefully had vanished the moment blood was spilled. "The canyon," Kaya said, pointing toward a narrow gap in the red rocks. "We can defend there." "All of us?" Sam asked, looking at the mix of Apache warriors and remaining cavalry soldiers, most of whom were wounded. "You have a better idea." Before Sam could answer, a new voice cut through the chaos. Federal Marshal Jacob Stone riding hard with a dozen deputies. "Cease fire, federal officers." The shooting gradually died down as Stone's men took position around the ranch yard. The marshal himself dismounted calmly, surveying the carnage with professional detachment. "Well," he said dryly, "this is unfortunate." Captain Thornton, bleeding from a gash on his forehead, struggled to his feet. "Marshal Stone, thank God. I'm arresting these people for harboring Apache terrorists." "Are you now—" Stone's tone was conversational, but his hand rested on his pistol. "On whose authority, military authority, these women are escaped prisoners?" "No," Stone said firmly. "They're not." He produced a document from his jacket. "I have signed statements from the real military transport unit. No Apache prisoners have escaped in the past month. Your information is fabricated." Thornton's face went pale. "That's impossible. I have orders directly from whom, Captain? Because the orders I've seen show you were supposed to be patrolling the Mexican border, not attacking civilians." The implications hung in the air like smoke. Someone had sent Thornton here under false orders, using forged documents to legitimize what amounted to a kidnapping attempt. Chief Nighthawk, who had been following the English conversation with visible effort, spoke up. "My daughters, they are safe." "They're safe," Stone confirmed, "and free. The slave auction where they were sold has been declared illegal by federal court. Any claims of military custody are fraudulent." Sam felt relief flood through him, but Kaya's expression remained guarded. Too many reversals had occurred too quickly for easy trust. "If we're free," she said, "then we can leave whenever we choose." "Absolutely." Stone nodded. "Though I'd strongly recommend staying put for now. There are people in this territory who will go to great lengths to prevent my investigation from succeeding. You're safer here than anywhere else." "What investigation?" Sam asked. Stone looked around at the mixed group. Apache warriors, cavalry soldiers, ranch hands, and federal deputies, all watching him with varying degrees of suspicion. "The investigation into the largest criminal conspiracy in Arizona Territory history," he said grimly. "A conspiracy that involves illegal slave trading, land fraud, murder, and treason. A conspiracy that reaches into the highest levels of territorial government." "Treason?" Captain Thornton looked genuinely shocked. "That's a serious accusation, Marshal." "It's a serious crime, Captain, and you've just provided me with evidence of how deep it goes." Stone gestured to his deputies. "Arrest Captain Thornton and his men on charges of impersonating federal officers and attempted kidnapping." "You can't arrest military personnel," Thornton protested. "I can when they're not really military personnel," Stone replied. "Your unit was mustered out last month, Captain. Officially, you don't exist." As the truth sank in, Thornton's composure cracked. "They told me it was a special assignment, anti-Apache intelligence work. I was following orders." "Whose orders?" But Thornton had said too much already. His face closed down, the look of a man who'd realized he was expendable in someone else's game. "I want a lawyer," he said finally. As Stone's men led away the fake soldiers, Chief Nighthawk approached Sam. The Apache leader was a man in his 50s, his face carved by weather and warfare, but his eyes held the sharp intelligence that had kept his people alive through decades of conflict. "You fought to protect my daughters," he said in careful English. "Yes, sir." "Why?" It was the same question everyone kept asking, and Sam was tired of trying to explain something that felt as natural as breathing. "Because it was right," he said simply. Chief Nighthawk studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You may marry my daughter." "Father." Kaya protested, but there was more embarrassment than anger in her voice. "What?" Sam looked stunned. "I never said anything about marriage. You fight for her. You risk your life for her. You protect her honor. In Apache tradition, this makes you suitable husband." "In Apache tradition," Kaya said firmly, "women choose their own husbands." "And have you chosen?" her father asked with a slight smile. The question hung in the air, and Sam found himself holding his breath. After everything they'd been through, all the trust built and broken and rebuilt, what was Kaya's answer? "I choose," she said slowly, "to take time to think about it." It wasn't a rejection, but it wasn't acceptance either. Given the circumstances, Sam decided to count it as progress. Marshal Stone approached the group, his expression serious. I hate to interrupt, but we have immediate problems. The people behind this conspiracy know their operation is compromised. They'll be moving to eliminate witnesses. What kind of witnesses? Sam asked. Anyone who can testify about the illegal auctions, the fake military raids, the land grab scheme. That includes you, Mr. Hayes, and both Nighthawk sisters. Chief Nighthawk spoke up. My people, we can protect ourselves. We have hidden camps in the mountains. Your camps won't be hidden if someone's feeding information to your enemies, Stone pointed out. And I have reason to believe that's exactly what's happening. The accusation sent a chill through the group. If someone in the Apache community was working with the conspiracy, nowhere would be safe. You're suggesting a spy, Kaya said. I'm suggesting we've been outmaneuvered at every turn. Someone always seems to know our plans before we execute them. Before anyone could respond, Ayanna appeared on the porch supported by Maria. The younger sister had been recovering in the house during the firefight, but now she looked at the assembled warriors and lawmen with confusion. What's happening? She asked in Apache. Chief Nighthawk's stern expression softened as he saw his younger daughter. In rapid Apache, he explained the situation, and Sam watched emotions play across Ayanna's face, relief at seeing her father fear about the ongoing danger, and something else he couldn't identify. When her father finished speaking, Ayanna looked directly at Sam. You fought for us again. Always. Sam replied without thinking, then felt his face redden at the admission. Ayanna smiled, the first genuine smile Sam had seen from her since the auction. Kaya, you should marry this man. Ayanna. Kaya's protest was automatic, but Sam noticed she didn't actually say no. Marshal Stone cleared his throat. As touching as this is, we need to make decisions. I can offer federal protection, but it means leaving this ranch and going somewhere they can't find you. Where? Sam asked. A safe house in Colorado. Isolated, defensible, completely off the territorial records. Sam looked around at his ranch. The home he'd built with Ellen, the place where he'd grieved and healed and finally found purpose again. Leaving felt like abandoning part of himself. How long? He asked. Until the trials are over. Could be months. And if we stay? Stone's expression was grim. Then you'll probably be dead within a week. Chief Nighthawk spoke up. There is another option. My people, we know these mountains better than any white man. We can disappear where no one can follow. All of us? Sam asked. You'd take me with you? The Apache chief studied him again, weighing something only he could understand. A man who fights for my daughters, fights for my people. You would be welcome. It was an extraordinary offer, acceptance into a community that had every reason to hate him, but it also meant abandoning everything he'd built in the white world. I need time to think, Sam said. Time is what we don't have, Stone warned. Every hour we delay gives them more opportunity to organize. As if to emphasize his point, the sound of approaching riders echoed from the distance. But this time it wasn't soldiers or vigilantes. It was a single rider pushing his horse hard and calling out as he approached. Marshal Stone, Marshal Stone. The rider was one of Stone's deputies, a young man named Peters who'd been left in town to watch for trouble. As he reined in his lathered horse, his face showed the kind of fear that comes from witnessing something terrible. What is it, Peters? Stone demanded. They hit the jail marshal, broke out Blackwood and his men, killed Sheriff Bradshaw and 2 deputies. The whole town's going crazy. The news hit like a thunderbolt. If Blackwood was free, he could rally the remnants of his organization for one final assault. And if corrupt lawmen were being eliminated, it meant the conspiracy was cutting loose ends. How many men does Blackwood have? Stone asked. Maybe 30, 40, armed with military weapons. They're saying they're going to clean out every Apache sympathizer in the territory. Sam felt his blood turn to ice. This wasn't about arrests or legal proceedings anymore. This was about extermination. They're coming here, Kaya said with certainty. This ranch, these people, we're the biggest threat to their operation. How long do we have? Sam asked. Peters looked at the sun, calculating. They were organizing when I left town 2 hours ago. If they push hard, they'll be here by sunset. Sunset was less than 3 hours away. Chief Nighthawk spoke rapidly in Apache to his warriors, and Sam caught enough words to understand the gist. Defensive position, supply checks, ammunition counts. The Apache were preparing for a siege. We can't defend this place, Stone said, reading the situation with professional clarity. not against 40 men with military weapons. Then we don't defend it, Sam said, a plan forming in his mind. We abandon it. And go where? Kaya asked. Sam pointed toward the narrow canyon that cut through the red rocks behind his ranch. Devil's Canyon. It's a maze back there, dozens of caves and passages. If we can get there before they arrive, we can disappear completely. Or get trapped like rats, Stone pointed out. Maybe, but rats can bite back if they're cornered in the right place. Chief Nighthawk nodded approvingly. The white man thinks like Apache. Use the land against your enemies. It's our best option, Sam decided. We take what we can carry and get into those rocks before Blackwood arrives. What about Maria? Kaya asked, looking toward the house where the housekeeper was still tending to Ayanna. She comes with us, Sam said firmly. All of us together or not at all. As the mixed group began preparing for evacuation, Sam took one last look at his ranch house. 5 years of memories, good and bad, would stay behind. But for the first time since Ellen's death, he wasn't leaving his life behind. He was taking it with him. The real battle was about to begin, and everything they'd fought for hung in the balance. But as he watched Kaya checking weapons with her father's warriors and Ayanna helping Maria pack supplies, Sam realized something important had changed. He was no longer fighting alone. Whatever came next, they would face it as a family, chosen rather than born, forged in conflict rather than blood, but real nonetheless. The sound of distant gunfire drifted across the desert, and Sam knew their time was up. Blackwood's army was coming, and the final confrontation could no longer be avoided. But in Devil's Canyon, among the red rocks that had sheltered Apache for centuries, they would make their stand. And perhaps if they were lucky and brave and willing to trust each other completely, they might just survive to see a new dawn. The sun was setting behind the mountains, painting the sky the color of blood and fire, as the last free people in Arizona territory disappeared into the labyrinth of stone that would either be their salvation or their tomb. Devil's Canyon cut through the red rocks like a wound in the earth, its narrow passages and hidden chambers offering sanctuary to those who knew its secrets. As the sun disappeared behind the western mountains, casting long shadows across the desert floor, Sam led his unlikely band of refugees deeper into the stone labyrinth that might be their salvation or their tomb. How much farther? Marshal Stone called softly from behind his voice, echoing off the canyon walls despite his attempt at quiet. Another quarter mile, Sam replied, consulting landmarks only he could read. There's a place where the canyon widens into a natural amphitheater, caves on 3 sides, only 2 ways in or out. If we're going to make a stand, that's where we do it. Chief Nighthawk rode beside him on a painted warhorse that seemed to navigate the rocky terrain by instinct. The Apache leader had been silent since entering the canyon, but Sam could see him evaluating every stone, every shadow, every defensive possibility with the eye of a warrior who'd survived decades of warfare. Your canyon, the chief said finally. You know it well. Ellen and I used to come here, Sam admitted. She said it was like being inside a cathedral made of fire, said God painted these rocks to remind people that beauty could exist even in the hardest places. Your woman, she understood Apache ways, Nighthawk observed. The earth is sacred. Rock and ski and water, they speak to those who listen. Behind them, the rest of their group moved in tense silence. 15 Apache warriors, 6 federal deputies, Maria with Ayanna on horseback, and Kaya walking alongside Sam's horse with the fluid grace of someone equally at home on foot or mounted. The young Apache woman had spoken little since the confrontation with the fake soldiers, but Sam could feel her watching him, weighing something in her mind. Contact, one of Stone's deputies called from the rear guard. Riders approaching fast from the south. Sam's heart sank. They were still 10 minutes from the defensive position, caught in the open canyon with nowhere to run and limited room to maneuver. Through the gathering dusk, he could see torches moving among the rocks at the canyon mouth. Blackwood's men had found them faster than expected. How many? Stone demanded. 20, maybe 30, and they're spreading out to cut off our retreat. Chief Nighthawk spoke rapidly in Apache to his warriors, and immediately half of them wheeled their horses around to form a rear guard. These men had fought cavalry miners and settlers for most of their adult lives. They knew how to make every bullet count. Keep moving, Sam ordered. We get to the amphitheater or we all die in this bottleneck. The first gunshots echoed through the canyon like thunder muzzle flashes lighting up the red walls. Behind them, the Apache rear guard was making Blackwood's men pay for every yard of advance. But Sam could hear more riders approaching from other directions. They were being surrounded. There. Kaya pointed ahead to where the canyon walls suddenly opened into a wider space. Your amphitheater. The natural formation was everything Sam had promised. A circular area perhaps 100 yards across with caves and overhangs carved into the walls by centuries of wind and water. More importantly, the only entrances were narrow passages that could be defended by small numbers against much larger forces. Caves, Stone shouted to his men. Defensive positions, interlocking fields of fire. As the group scattered to take cover, Sam found himself momentarily alone with Kaya in the center of the amphitheater. The young Apache woman had her rifle ready, but her dark eyes were fixed on him with an intensity that had nothing to do with the approaching battle. Sam, she said urgently, before this starts, I need to tell you something. Can it wait? He asked, checking his ammunition. We're about to be in the fight of our lives. That's why it can't wait. She stepped closer, close enough that he could see flecks of gold in her brown eyes. When those soldiers came today, when you doubted me for just a moment, Kaya, I never... You did. And you had the right to. Her voice was steady despite the gunfire growing closer. I haven't told you everything about my past, about what I did during the Apache Wars. Sam's blood chilled. What do you mean? Before she could answer, the canyon erupted in violence. Blackwood's men poured through both entrances simultaneously, their torches turning the red rocks into a hellscape of fire and shadow. But they quickly discovered that storming a position held by Apache warriors and federal lawmen was considerably different from raiding defenseless homesteads. The first wave of attackers ran straight into Chief Nighthawk's carefully positioned riflemen. Apache marksmanship had been legendary even among their enemies, and tonight they lived up to their reputation. Men fell screaming from their horses as bullets found their marks with supernatural precision. But Blackwood had learned from his previous encounters with organized resistance. Instead of charging blindly into the killing ground, his men began using covering fire and coordinated movement, advancing by bounds while their companions provided suppression. They know what they're doing, Stone observed grimly from his position behind a fallen boulder. These aren't just criminals and drifters. Someone's been training them. Sam had noticed the same thing. The attackers moved with the discipline of soldiers, using proper small unit tactics that suggested military leadership. But who was commanding them? His question was answered when a familiar voice boomed across the amphitheater, amplified by the canyon walls. Samuel Hayes, I know you can hear me. Sam's blood turned to ice. He knew that voice, though he hadn't heard it in 5 years. Colonel Marcus Harrison, his former commanding officer during the Apache campaigns, the man who'd ordered the massacre of women and children that had finally turned Sam against the war. Harrison, Sam breathed. You know him? Kaya asked. My former colonel, the one who gave me that saber. Sam's hands trembled with a mixture of rage and shock. He's supposed to be retired. Hayes, Harrison's voice continued, I'm giving you one chance to surrender. Send out the Apache prisoners and we'll discuss terms. Go to hell, Marcus, Sam shouted back. Harsh laughter echoed off the rocks. Still the idealistic young officer, I see. Very well, I tried to do this the easy way. What followed was a demonstration of why Colonel Harrison had been one of the most feared Indian fighters in the territory. His men began a systematic assault on the defensive positions, using grenades to blast defenders out of their caves and coordinated rifle fire to keep heads down while assault teams moved forward. But Harrison had made one critical error. He'd underestimated both Apache tactical knowledge and federal determination. Marshal Stone's deputies were experienced lawmen who'd fought outlaws from Texas to California, while Chief Nighthawk's warriors had been perfecting guerrilla warfare since childhood. The battle raged for over an hour, echoing through the canyon like the apocalypse itself. Men died on both sides, the red rocks becoming slippery with actual blood. But gradually it became clear that Harrison's assault was stalling. The defenders held every advantage of terrain and motivation. That's when the real surprise arrived. Contact from the east. One of the Apache sentries called out in his native language. More riders. Sam's heart sank. If Harrison had additional reinforcements, the defense was doomed. But as the new arrivals moved into the firelight, Sam's despair turned to confusion, then to amazement. The newcomers weren't more of Harrison's men. They were Apache, but not from Chief Nighthawk's band. These warriors wore different paint, carried different weapons, and rode horses with markings Sam didn't recognize. "Mescalero," Chief Nighthawk said with satisfaction. "My old friend comes to help." Leading the new arrivals was an Apache chief even older than Nighthawk, a man whose scarred face and missing left eye spoke of a lifetime spent fighting for his people's survival. As he dismounted and approached their position, Sam could see the respect in Chief Nighthawk's expression. Whitehair Nighthawk said in English for Sam's benefit, "This is Chief Miguel Whitehair of the Mescalero Apache. We fought together against the Spanish, against the Mexicans, against the Americans. He is my brother in war." Chief Whitehair looked at Sam with open curiosity. "This is the white man who fights for our children." "He is," Nighthawk confirmed. "He has proven himself worthy." Whitehair nodded slowly. "Then we fight for him, as we fight for our own." The arrival of 30 fresh Apache warriors changed the entire dynamic of the battle. Harrison's men suddenly found themselves caught between two forces, their flanks exposed to attack from warriors who knew every trick of desert warfare. But Colonel Harrison wasn't finished yet. As his assault faltered, he played his final card. "Hayes," his voice boomed across the canyon again, "I have something that belongs to you." Sam saw a movement at the eastern entrance to the amphitheater. Several figures were being pushed forward under guard, and Sam's blood turned to ice as he recognized them. Dr. Franklin, the physician who'd helped expose Blackwood's slave trading, Rosa Martinez Maria's sister who worked in town, and most shocking of all, a young Apache woman Sam didn't recognize, but who made both Nighthawk sisters gasp in recognition. "Itzel," Ayanna whispered. "Our cousin." "I have 3 of your friends," Harrison continued. "The good doctor who's been spreading lies about legitimate business operations, the Mexican woman who's been passing information to federal marshals, and this charming Apache girl who was captured trying to warn you about tonight's operation." The implications hit Sam like a physical blow. Itzel must have been the spy Stone suspected, but working for them rather than against them. And now Harrison had her along with 2 innocent civilians. "Here are my terms," Harrison called out. "The 2 Apache women who started all this trouble. In exchange, these 3 live. Refuse and I'll have them shot where they stand." Chief Nighthawk's face had gone granite hard. In the flickering firelight, he looked like a carved war god contemplating terrible vengeance. But Sam could see the pain in the older man's eyes. Another grandchild at risk, more family threatened by white man's greed. "Don't even think about it," Kaya said firmly, reading Sam's expression. "Ayanna and I won't be responsible for more innocent deaths." "And I won't let you sacrifice yourselves," Sam replied. "There has to be another way." "There is," said a new voice from the shadows. Marshal Stone emerged from behind a boulder, his face grim but determined. "But it requires trusting someone we're not sure we can trust." "What do you mean?" Sam asked. Stone looked directly at Kaya. "I mean, it's time for Miss Nighthawk to tell us about her connection to Captain William Thornton, the real Captain Thornton." Kaya's face went pale in the firelight. Around them, the gunfire had died down to sporadic shots as both sides waited for the hostage negotiation to play out. But Sam could feel tension building like pressure in a steam boiler. "I don't know what you're talking about," Kaya said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Don't you—" Stone's tone was conversational but relentless. "See, the real Captain Thornton, the one whose identity was stolen today, disappeared 3 months ago while investigating reports of illegal weapon sales to Apache raiders. His last known location was the Chiricahua Mountains, right around where you and your sister were supposedly captured." Sam felt the world shifting under his feet. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that either Miss Nighthawk knows what happened to the real Captain Thornton or she was involved in his disappearance. Either way, she has information that could end this standoff." Kaya's hand moved to the knife at her belt, but this time Sam couldn't tell if it was defensive reflex or preparation for something else entirely. In the firelight, her face showed a mixture of fear, determination, and something that might have been guilt. "Kaya," Sam said quietly, "whatever it is, just tell us. We'll face it together." For a moment she looked like she might speak. Then Harrison's voice echoed across the canyon again. "Time's up. Hayes, send out the women or watch your friends die. That's when Ayanna surprised everyone by standing up from her protected position and walking into the open center of the amphitheater. I'll go, she called out in a voice that carried clearly across the canyon. But I want to speak to Colonel Harrison first, face to face. Ayanna, no. Kaya started forward, but her sister held up a hand to stop her. This has to end, Ayanna said firmly. Too many people have died already. Too much blood has been spilled over something that started with simple human greed. What are you doing? Sam demanded. Ayanna's smile was sad but determined. Something I should have done weeks ago, something my sister has been protecting me from since the day we were captured. She walked toward the canyon entrance, hands raised to show she was unarmed. The gunfire stopped completely as both sides watched this young Apache woman voluntarily surrender herself to save others. Colonel Harrison, she called out, I'm coming out, but I want to make you an offer. What kind of offer? Harrison's voice was suspicious but interested. Information, Ayanna replied. Information about gold. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Gold, the motivation behind every land grab, every treaty violation, every act of genocide in the territory's history. What gold? Harrison demanded. The gold you've been looking for in the Chiricahua Mountains. The gold that real Captain Thornton found before you had him killed. The gold that's worth more than all your slave trading and land fraud combined. Sam's mind reeled. This was about gold. But how did Ayanna know about it? And what did any of this have to do with the missing cavalry officer? You're bluffing, Harrison said, but Sam could hear uncertainty in his voice. Am I? Ayanna had reached the canyon mouth, now standing in full view of Harrison's men. Captain Thornton found an old Spanish mine, didn't he? A mine that's been lost for 200 years. A mine that contains enough gold to make territorial governor rich beyond imagination. Ayanna, Kaya called desperately, don't do this. But her sister ignored her. The problem is, Colonel, the mine is on Apache land, treaty-protected land that can't be seized legally, so you needed to eliminate the Apache who might have prior claims. You needed to make us disappear completely. Harrison stepped into the firelight, and Sam got his first clear look at his former commanding officer in 5 years. The colonel had aged badly, his face lined with the kind of stress that came from maintaining too many lies for too long. But his eyes still held the cold calculation that had made him such an effective killer. Very interesting theory, Harrison said, but you're forgetting something, girl. You're in no position to negotiate. Actually, I am. Ayanna's voice carried a confidence that seemed to surprise even her. Because I know exactly where the mine is, and more importantly, I know where Captain Thornton hid the official survey documents before you murdered him. The revelation hit like lightning. If there were official documents proving the mine's location and the Apache land claims, they could expose the entire conspiracy and bring down everyone involved. You're lying, Harrison snarled. But sweat was beating on his forehead despite the cool night air. The documents are hidden in a place only Apache know about, a sacred place where white men fear to go. Kill me and you'll never find them. The mine will remain lost forever. Sam watched this exchange with growing amazement and terror. Ayanna was playing the most dangerous game imaginable, bluffing with her own life against a man who'd already proven he would kill anyone who threatened his interests. But her gamble was working. Harrison was clearly rattled, his careful plans unraveling in the face of information he hadn't expected anyone to possess. What do you want? He asked finally. Safe passage for everyone in this canyon. The hostages released unharmed. Your men withdraw to at least 10 miles from here. In exchange, I'll take you to the documents. And then you can have your gold, Colonel, all of it. The mine, the land claims everything. I just want my family to live. It was a masterful piece of negotiation, offering Harrison everything he wanted while buying time for the others to escape. But Sam could see the flaw in the plan. Once Ayanna gave up the document's location, she would be expendable. Ayanna? He called out. Don't trust him. He'll kill you the moment he has what he wants. I know, she replied, her voice calm, despite the circumstances. But sometimes the only way to save people you love is to sacrifice yourself for them. The words cut through Sam like a knife. This brave young woman was prepared to die to save strangers who'd shown her kindness. It was the kind of courage that defined heroes in the stories people told around campfires. But Sam wasn't about to let her become a martyr. "I have a counteroffer, Marcus," Sam called out, stepping into the open beside Ayanna. "Sam, no," Kaya shouted, but he ignored her. "The documents she's talking about, I know where they are too. Ellen and I found them years ago while exploring the sacred caves. We never understood their significance, but we photographed them as curiosities." It was a complete lie, but Harrison had no way of knowing that. "You're bluffing," Harrison said, but uncertainty flickered in his voice. "Am I?" Ellen was fascinated by history, especially the Spanish colonial period. She documented everything we found in those caves, artifacts, pictographs, and yes, official documents in Spanish and English. The photographs are in a safe deposit box in the Tucson bank. Sam was improvising desperately, but he could see the lie taking hold. Harrison knew Ellen had been an educated woman with intellectual interests. The story was plausible enough to create doubt. "Even if that's true," Harrison said, "it doesn't change anything. I still need one of the Apache women to authenticate the location." "Then take me," Sam said. "I know the caves. I know where Ellen hid her photographs, and I'm the one you really want anyway. I'm the one who disrupted your auction, interfered with your operations, turned federal attention onto your activities. The women are just bystanders." Harrison's laugh was ugly. "You always were too noble for your own good, Hayes. Very well, you and the young woman both come with me. The rest stay here until I verify your claims." "No," Kaya said, stepping into the firelight beside them. "If they go, I go too. And me," Chief Nighthawk added, his warriors moving to flank him. "And me," Marshal Stone said, his deputies spreading out for better firing positions. One by one, everyone in the amphitheater stepped forward until they were all standing together in the open center, presenting a united front against Harrison's forces. "Well," Harrison said after a moment, "this is touching, but ultimately pointless. I have 40 men to your 25, and I control the high ground. You can't possibly win." "Maybe not," Sam said, "but we can make sure you lose too." As if to emphasize his point, Chief Whitehair spoke up from his position on the canyon rim above Harrison's men. "Colonel Harrison," the old Apache chief called down in accented but clear English, "you forget something important. This is our land. We know its secrets." Harrison spun around, finally realizing that his men were not just surrounded but potentially trapped. The Apache warriors on the rim above had the high ground, and their position was virtually unassailable. "What do you want?" Harrison asked, his confidence finally cracking. "Justice," Chief Nighthawk replied, "for my granddaughter who was sold like cattle, for Captain Thornton who was murdered for doing his duty, for all the Apache families destroyed by your greed." "And gold?" Harrison asked desperately. "The mine is worth millions. We can share it, all of us." "Some things," Ayanna said quietly, "are worth more than gold." It was Chief Whitehair who ended the standoff, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd spent 70 years fighting for his people's survival. "You have 1 minute to release the hostages and withdraw your men, Colonel. After that, we begin hunting you through these canyons like the animals you are." Harrison looked around at his increasingly nervous men, at the Apache warriors, positioned on every piece of high ground, at the federal lawmen who would testify against him in court. His conspiracy was collapsing, his forces outnumbered and outmaneuvered, his political protection worthless in the face of federal charges. "This isn't over," he snarled, but he was already backing toward the canyon entrance. "Yes," Sam said quietly. "It is." As Harrison's men began their withdrawal, releasing the hostages and melting back into the darkness, Sam found himself standing with Kaya and Ayanna in the center of the amphitheater. Around them, Apache warriors and federal lawmen worked together to secure the area and tend to the wounded. "Is it really over?" Ayanna asked. "The fighting is," Marshal Stone said, approaching their group. "But there will be trials, testimony, legal proceedings. This conspiracy reaches deep into territorial government. Cleaning it out will take time." "And us?" Kaya asked. "What happens to us?" Stone smiled, the first genuine smile Sam had seen from the serious lawman. "You're free, all of you, free to go wherever you want, do whatever you choose. The federal government owes you a debt that can never be fully repaid." As the others began making camp for the night, Sam found himself alone with Kaya on a ledge overlooking the amphitheater. The stars were brilliant overhead, unmarred by the smoke of battle, and the red rocks seemed to glow with their own inner light. You were going to tell me something, Sam said quietly, before the shooting started, something about your past. Kaya was quiet for a long moment, looking out over the canyon that had sheltered them through the worst night of their lives. Captain Thornton, she said finally, the real one. I knew him. Sam's heart clenched, but he waited for her to continue. He came to our village under a flag of truce, said he was investigating weapon sales, looking for evidence of corruption in the military supply chain. My father. She paused, struggling with the words. My father trusted him, shared information about white men who sold guns to Apache raiders, thinking it would help bring peace. What happened? Harrison's men found him in our village. They accused him of consorting with the enemy of treason. They were going to arrest him, take him back for court-martial. Kaya's voice dropped to almost a whisper. But Captain Thornton knew what would happen. He knew Harrison would kill him before he could testify. So he asked us to help him disappear, to make it look like Apache had captured and killed him, when really he was hiding in the sacred caves documenting everything he'd learned about the conspiracy. Sam felt relief flood through him. You were protecting him. We were trying to. But Harrison's men found the caves eventually. They killed Captain Thornton and stole his documents. That's when they captured Ayanna and me. We were witnesses to the murder. Why didn't you tell me before? Kaya looked at him with eyes that held years of pain and mistrust. Because in my experience, white men don't believe Apache women when they accuse white soldiers of murder. They assume we're lying to protect ourselves. But you believe I'm different. I believe, she said slowly, that you've proven yourself worthy of the truth. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. Below them, their unlikely family was settling in for the night. Apache warriors sharing blankets with federal deputies, Maria telling stories that made even Chief Nighthawk smile, Ayanna, teaching one of Stone's men a traditional healing song. What happens now? Sam asked. When all this is over, when the trials are finished, when life goes back to normal? I don't know, Kia admitted. Normal seems like something that belongs to other people. Maybe we could make our own normal. She looked at him, then really looked at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Is that a proposal, Samuel Hayes? It's an invitation, he said carefully, to build something new together, something that honors both our pasts while creating a different kind of future. A future where Apache and Anglo can be family, a future where family is what you choose, not what you're born into. Kaya was quiet for a long moment, and Sam held his breath. Everything they'd been through, all the trust they'd built, came down to this moment. Yes, she said finally. I think I'd like to see what that looks like. As dawn broke over Devil's Canyon painting, the red rocks in shades of gold and crimson, Sam knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The old world of hatred and division was ending, and in its place, something new and hopeful was being born. The gathering storm had passed, but what it left behind was stronger than what had come before.